Om Gurave Namah. Welcome to the Shri Jyoti Star Masterclass, webinar number 2. In the first webinar, we went over quite a few fundamental things, and now we're going to do a few more and some techniques that you can do with the software. I'd first like to start explaining the pop-up. If you right-click somewhere, say on this chart, then you get this pop-up menu. And this is a series of shortcuts to many useful things. For example, the first item, what's this, takes you straight to the help page for that particular item. There's a lot of help, and this is a quick way of getting to it. Then we have shortcuts for primary data edit, native 2 data edit, the choices and options screen for the different kinds of pages, the various buttons, just in case you can't see them. And then here we have the various color schemes. So you can have color schemes for the whole program, the global color scheme, or you can have color schemes for the pages, or for even individual charts, tables, or graphs. So let's look at this. Now, the basic color scheme that I tend to use a lot is what I call the natural color scheme that you see on the page at the moment, which is where the moon is kind of pink, the Mars is red, Saturn is blue, and so forth. So you're welcome to use that. But these other color schemes have various advantages. So if we take the dignity scheme of Prashna, then this is basically going to use the exaltation, own sign, friendly sign, neutral sign, enemy sign, and debilitation sign, and color code accordingly. So we select that. We'll see now that everything on the page has got these various colors. So the orangey colors are own sign, exaltation sign, like Sun in Leo, while the sort of more murky or purplish colors are on the other end of the spectrum, and Jupiter is in a kind of neutral state here in Libra. So that's one scheme, and it's useful because you can see at a glance everywhere in the Dashas and everywhere else what is the strength of the planet. If we take the next one, it's called traffic light scheme. Well, that's very easy to understand. It's exactly the same, except it's only split into 3. So you have the strong planets are green, and the little bit troubled planets like Moon in Scorpio are red, and then the rest are going to be orange. The next one is called the multi-factor scoring. Now this takes a lot of more things in consideration: aspects, dispositors, nakshatra position, navamsha position, being hemmed in by malefics, so many things. And it's all added together and you get a final kind of a score. It's a score. So the scoring is then color-coded in pretty much the same way as the dignity scores, but it just takes more into account. So that lets you get a glance. It's an at-a-glance color coding. Now, suppose you want to understand more about this color coding. You can click somewhere, and then you get the choices and options screen. And then you just type a little bit of color edit, and you'll see this option, color edit, edit colors in color schemes. So this brings up this little dialog box, and here you have all the colors for the natural color scheme. You can change any of them. You just have to click on the item, and then you get this, which allows you to select colors, even to a very, any color you want, really. So you can do that for all these natural color schemes. Otherwise, you choose your color scheme from the top. So for example, here's the dignity scheme. You can see the range of colors, or the multi-factor scoring. It's essentially the same. Then there are other scoring schemes. This is the Aya scheme, Pandit Aya's students, like the students of Heart to Foe. So these are color-coded by yogi, apayogi, duplicate yogi, and other factors, Dagdarashis, and so forth. Then there's a systems approach, which is based on being functional benefic or functional malefic, or afflicted, most malefic. And then there's the mono by group. This is another one. Some people like everything to be the same color, but some variation, just to distinguish between ascendants, top one, planets, upagrahas, arudas, houses, and other. So it's a simple scheme, but you can get even simpler by going the monochrome. So in this, you're going to get one color. It's basically black on white, or you can have different colored backgrounds and different color for everything else. So this is completely customizable. You can also control the colors of the backgrounds. Like I said, you can control the screen background, which is like the color between the charts, the chart background, or behind the color behind the tables, and even the top of the form color. And to do that, you just click on one of these. Suppose you want to change the chart background, you click there, and then you get the color dialog, and you can choose whatever color you want. So for example, we could have a different shade of, a lighter shade of pale or something. You get something different. Now, I'm not going to change it right now, but if you click OK, that will change it. So this is how to do the colors. Okay, so those are the various color schemes. I'm personally rather stuck on the natural scheme, so we'll go back to that. All right, so we've been through these things at the top here, and then we've got color schemes. Now, it says cycle titles. So I showed you last time, you can set the title for each individual item. Did I show you that? Maybe I didn't. Let's click on a chart and we type in title. And we'll see that the title type here is description. So that's like Rashi, general. And then you can have the native name instead of the description. Or you can have the description plus the lagna changing times. This is just for charts. So and this works the Varga charts as well. So if you select this thing, it'll tell you when the ascendant is changing, the starting and ending of the ascendant. So for a Rashi chart, that's going to be a couple of hours. And for Varga charts, it gets shorter and shorter. So it's really useful, actually, because you can have a page with all the Varga charts on them, and you can set them all to this. Say you want to change everything. So you can either use this button up here, it says title. So each time you click it, it'll cycle through the titles. Or you can do the same thing from the pop-up, and that is going there. So you can cycle everything on the page, or you can cycle the title of the particular item. Then this one lets you change all the charts on the page to some other scheme. So if we like the North Indian charts, that's a kind of instantaneous way of changing them. Now, if you have, let's say, let's go back to the South Indian. And depending on how many planets you have in each sign, they tend to get bigger or smaller, because the software is trying to make the glyphs as big as the space allows. But sometimes the contrast is too strong, So if we want to control that, we right-click on the chart, and then we go to equalize symbol sizes in charts. If we go down to this chart, you'll see we have more choices. There's equalized, or we can have maximum size available, or maximum size but a little smaller, or maximum size a little smaller than that. So between these four choices, you can probably find something that appeals to you for the appearance of the chart. There are a few other things here. You can turn on the degrees, and you can have small degrees or big degrees. So most of the time, the small degrees is okay. But if you're preparing slides for a presentation, you may want to use the big degrees because they'll be more readable from the back of the hall. That was the main reason I put that in there. In a moment, when I finish this section, we'll go on to, we'll have a look at how to put things next to the glyphs. So there's also a few choices in terms of what you have to show, you know. There's just a few choices. There are many more choices in the choices and options, but you can quickly get, like, you want the outer planets, so you got the outer planets like that. Okay, so that's quite useful. You can hide the title. If you decide you don't actually want the title to something, you can just hide it. And then you can have aspect lines in charts. But the aspect lines depends on the orb, because if you increase the orb, you effectively have more and more aspect lines. I mean, aspects can be very strong aspects, like a triangle aspect. At 120 degrees, that is a very strong aspect. But as you move away from the 120, then there's still some degree of aspect. So if you widen the orb, then you'll get more and more lines appearing. And if you narrow it, you'll get fewer. So actually, these shortcuts here are particularly useful. You can use this, but if you use Shift Control W, let me show you this. See this thing at the top? This lets us put in different kinds of aspects. So there's a whole bunch of different choices. Jaimini aspects, that's Rashi aspects, Prashna aspects, both Rashi and Graha planetary aspects. These are just pure sign aspects, systems approach aspects, Tajika aspects of people who are into Varshval. Western aspects, these are all the different Western aspects. So you see Shift Control W, I'm just doing that on my keyboard, and you'll see you get more and more aspects until it's difficult to interpret. So it's sometimes better to have fewer aspects, and eventually you'll see the ones that are really strong. So these ones are, however much I tighten up the orb, we're still left with a few aspects. So like ascendant Neptune, like that. So this is, if you're into aspect lines on charts, this is a very handy thing. Okay, and then we've got text reports. We'll discuss that separately. Printing, we'll discuss that. But you can access it from here. You can change the page. Now here is something we wanted to discuss. So this is about copying or saving objects or the page as a whole. So you might want, suppose you want to save a chart or copy a chart, then you would do it here. You right click on the chart and you come down to the bottom here, and then you have two choices in Windows anyway. If you're running on Windows, Windows lets you save things as an image. Sometimes you'll get offered the choice of what they call EMF. It's a vector, so that you can use also. This isn't showing here for some reason, but it's usually there. So you can copy the image, and then you can, if you want, you can save it as a PDF or as a JPEG or whatever you choose. You can save the whole page. or you can save all the pages. So what you've got in multiple pages, it won't save the blank pages, just the pages you created something. And you can do this both in this part of the program where you're basically working on the screen, and also in the part of the program where you're preparing printouts. So we'll look at that a little later. But if you click on this, it'll go through all your pages and make a PDF file of all of them. This is new in version 9. And then you can connect that to, you can send it to people through email and like that. So there is an option for email, which is similar, but this requires you to have an email client. Windows has this thing it'll call the email client. Now, email client means something like Outlook or Thunderbird. Thunderbird is a free open source thing by the Mozilla people or Firefox people. You don't have to use it for anything else, but you can set it up on your computer and it'll work with Shri Jyoti Star. So if you do that, if you have Thunderbird or Outlook, you can just say, okay, I want to email all these pages to somebody, and you select the select this, for example, and it'll go through and it'll save all the pages, and then it'll generate the PDF file, and then it'll throw up the Thunderbird, which you may not be able to see because I'll have to switch the sharing. Here's the email with the PDF with all the files, all the pages. So let's just close that. All right, so if you want to send through using Gmail or something, then rather than using that email link here down here, you can just say copy or save. You save the page or save the image, or save all the pages, and then it'll ask you where you want, what you want to call it and where you want to save it. So you can then save it somewhere on your hard drive with some name, and then you can just attach it to your email. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. Good. So I hope that answers the question that was raised earlier about emailing. And these are the various options of the pop-up, including at the bottom you have the fastest way of deleting things is here. Okay, now let's talk a bit about dashas. Let's go to another page and let's take some layout example. See what this one is. Okay, so here's a couple of charts and some Vimshotri dashas. So there are, of course, some little videos on the website about dashas, but I'll just point out a few things. You see, these buttons at the top are very useful switches. The NW means now, so it'll just shift everything to the current time. That's very convenient. And 0 means birth, so it will go back to the birth. Otherwise, you can just scroll through it with your mouse, or you can use these buttons, and you can increase the number of levels here. Now, this particular object has 2 columns, so you can control the number of columns. So if you click on the thing, now this is something I introduced fairly recently. You can just type, say, +1 or -1, and then you'll see there's various things you can change. So you can change the height and width of objects on the screen, charts, dashas, and graphs. It won't affect tables by clicking these items. You can change the height and width of the grid. You see the current thing, it's 4 by 3. So if we go like this, let's say, let's increase the height by 1. See, now you've got some more space for stuff. And you increase the width by 1. You can, it's just the fastest way of playing with the grid, really. And then there's something else here which we probably should look at separately, but it's very useful for changing the years for the Vajra and Tithi Pravesh work you're doing. So I can cancel out of that. But these instant changes will remain. I should have recorrected it. But anyway, let's show changing the Swimshotari. So it'll generally remember the last thing you searched on. We can reduce this again. And we want to make it less wide because we want to put something else there. Now you still have to click done. Okay, so you've got, this is a single column. And the two other things which are very useful for dashas is that this column, the first column, if you click on it, say we see the Mars period starting here, you click here, it puts it at the top. The advantage of this is that if you want to look in detail, like you want to go to the 4th level, you could do an awful lot of screening, scrolling. You could do an awful lot of scrolling to get to that particular place. So it's easier to go back to some level like this, then you scroll to where you want, and then you click, and then you increase the number of levels. So that's the fastest way of getting to study some area in depth. So that's clicking on the first column. If you click on the second column, then it will give you the chart for the time when that dasha started. Now in Parashara, this is one of the important techniques that he teaches, what we call the Dasha Pravesh, the beginning of the dasha. You can do it for the beginning of Mahadashas or even sub-periods. So the concept really is that if the ruler of the period is in strength at the time when the period starts, then that should be a good omen for the period. That basically is the idea. But you can study the chart in some detail. One should just be aware that the ascendant you get is a little bit to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the ascendant is going to change. Even a fraction of a second on the birth time could change the ascendant of a dasha starting. So it's extremely critical on the birth time. It could be used for rectification, but the wise thing is not to give a lot of importance to the ascendant, but just look at the dignities of the planets. That's just the caveat, because otherwise you might get a bit carried away, but it's just the nature of the sensitivity of the exact time of the starting of the dasha. Now there's a couple of things I thought we'd discuss for getting instant answers. I remember I once had a phone call from a train, you know, he's an Indian pundit. I mean, he wasn't a beginner. He had all the knowledge of Jyotish. He said, I press one button and I get the answer. I said, Panditji, surely the people who consult you want your opinion. He said, no, it's too much trouble. So anyway, this is some time back, but sometimes there's some value in getting some kind of an instant answer to things. So I have a menu up here called the special menu. And there's a whole bunch of great stuff under this, but it also includes a couple of things. So we have what we call a quick Tajika Prashna. Now the Tajika thing, the Tajika system has some advantages in the sense that you really could program how to get an answer out of a chart, because it's very simple. Like it, really relies on these yogas they have. So first you select a chart, which will normally be a transit chart. Like if you're answering a question, you'll do a transit chart. You'll select the transit chart at the top here, however you calculate it. This is just a sort of toy example here. And then you have to select one of these choices. Now these choices are designed to reflect the 12 houses. So it may be kind of obvious that, like it says, having a child. Well, there's obviously a 5th house issue So all fifth house issues will come under the same heading. They're not separated here because the Tajika system is based on the house lords. So you select your area and you get an immediate answer. So it is a very immediate. Of course, one may want to do other things more Jyotish oriented, but if you want a quick answer, these things, sometimes it works. All right, so then that's one, and the other one is the Oracle of Rama, the Ramayana Oracle. So here, this is based on a simple oracle that's a traditional oracle, and it's based on certain verses from the Ramayana. So the idea is that you have to have some kind of feelings of devotion, really. I mean, there has to be some kind of consciousness behind this sort of thing, because we're basically depending on the moment to give us the answer. Like I was discussing the other day at the conference, you have to have a very calm and relaxed kind of state of consciousness. And then you click start. And then basically it's asking you to enter a number. And you have to enter 2 numbers. And it will, come up with some numbers for you. But you can click accept, or you can change. You see, suppose you've already picked a couple of numbers, or you've asked somebody to pick a couple of numbers, you can just enter them in here. And then you click accept, and it gives you first the Ramayana context. So it's some verse, and then you get an answer. So we haven't, these 2 numbers have not worked out too good here. So then the thing is, why are you getting this answer? Maybe your question is inappropriate, or maybe your question is, the motivation is poor, So you have to see what really is behind the question. So you get different sorts of answers. But obviously at this point I won't ask you a question because I didn't have any question in my mind, so it's just an example. So that's the oracles. I'd like to show you the planetarium. That's very cool. I think I made a page now under the layout examples for the planetarium. Here you go. Now, you can make this filling the whole screen, or you can, if this particular page has the planetarium itself and the fixed star results. The fixed star results are based on more of the Arabic kind of tradition, so you can use them or not as you like. They're traditional results. So basically there's here the name of the stars, and here is the planets that are conjunct them, and here are possible results. Now, in the actual planetarium, you can use the Vedic, like the nakshatras. So this is like Vishaka, this little star here is the principal star of Vishaka, yeah, Hasta and so forth. Swati's over here. So these are the actual Yogataras and you can work with those. The planets are shown here with an orb. This is the sort of traditional orb that's used for the planet. So actually it's very interesting because you can see here's Venus and Mars, their orbs are overlapping. And this is there's a whole system here where you consider conjunctions primarily based on the overlap of the orbs. And you can only really see that in the planetarium. So it has a definite and powerful use for natal astrology. It's quite good to check this before you study a chart to really see which planets are actually in the process of conjoining. Now you can modify this using these switches at the top. So this one says Vedic, we can switch it to Arab. These are all the names, Arabic names for all the stars. This is showing all the stars, or you can have only the conjunct stars. So this is just shows they're color coded. So you see this Venus is conjunct this Glennar star, and Jupiter is conjunct Arcturus by longitude. Obviously, latitude is always going to be different, but it's a longitudinal conjunction. So it's, and speaker also, you see, actually the one that's showing up down here is speaker, but they're both conjunct. So this is like that, or you can have the conjunction. You see Mercury's conjunct the Pushya star, otherwise not. And then there's looking south and looking north. It just flips the whole thing. And then you can turn off the stars. So these are the different choices. And this is where you can have some fun with the time flow thing. So suppose we set this to, let's say, 30 days is a month. And then we click run. You start seeing. Now that, you might want it to go slower or faster. I saw that K2 Jupiter thing going on there. So you can run it more slowly. Depending on what you're focused on, of course. So I've focused it so that really it's only the moon that's really moving. See the sun moving slowly. It's very interesting. And if you run it fast, that means multiple years. Let's go for this. And you watch carefully, you'll see the stars are moving. See them moving slowly? If you increase from 12 years up to 40 years, which is the max, then the stars really start moving. And this is the actual precession that you're seeing. You're seeing the precession because along the bottom are the tropical signs. Basically they're the astronomical signs. But in terms of what right ascension, what they call right ascension. So the stars are gradually shifting against this background, or rather the background shifting against the stars. So you can really see the truth of the astronomy, how it's working. It's very interesting. All right, so that's that. There's another cool thing called teaching example charts. So here is where you can actually create a sort of dummy chart. So you give it a title, and then maybe you select an ascendant, and then you could put Jupiter in somewhere, maybe in the 5th house. And you don't need to fill out all the planets. You just fill out the planets that you're interested in discussing in your class or whatever. So you can put Mercury somewhere else. Capricorn. And there you get it, you see. So that's why I call it teaching example charts. They're very useful for anyone who's wanting to create a sample chart that they can show in a presentation to describe a yoga or something like that. If you want to change it, you just find the teaching example chart and change it like that. Now we did about emailing data like charts, and we did about saving, but you can also copy and paste into other applications. So for example, let us say we want to put this example chart here into Microsoft Word. Any word processor that supports images we could use. Now, I do recommend that you think a little bit about the kind of width versus height sort of output that you want, because whatever we copy, it'll come out with that proportions. So if you can move the window around, for example, like this. I hope you're seeing that on the Zoom. And then you can right click on it and do copy image. And then you got a choice between saving it in color or saving it in monochrome. So if we click no, we'll get color. Then we go to Word, which I have to show you. Delete that. Now we just do paste. It's that easy. So you can copy paste into word processors, into Photoshop, into PowerPoint, whatever application that supports that pasting of images. And it's very useful. You can use it for publishing and so forth. Now there's a new page for Prashna query, answering queries. So I'd like to show you that because it's very cool. I gave a whole talk on this last weekend in Sedona, and I will make available the recording of that lecture, but just in short, because it's really beautiful. So it's under layout examples, and you go down to Prashna query. If you don't see that, you have to do what I told you in the last webinar about loading the thing from or importing the layout examples to file. Okay, so basically Prashna Marga, when you look into it, seems to be quite complicated and it has a lot of rules and calculations. And it's a bit scary, I think, for the average student. And so I also was kind of not really using it that much, but I realized that I could, take a lot of the effort out of it by processing some of the rules. And here's an example. So here's the natal chart, here's the Prashna chart, however you calculated it. And then here are some various flaws and positive things which Prashna Marga describes right at the beginning of the text to determine whether the time is favorable or not. These are not for natal astrology, mostly. It's really designed for determining if the person is asking the question at a favorable time. So we've got a fairly large number of flaws here. You don't rarely get a time that has no flaws, but I guess if you have 6 flaws, it's a little bit on the negative side. It does point out Rahu aspecting the ascendant. So that's something to consider. And then over here, before we do that, let's talk about this table down here. This table is very cool because it shows you if any planet is changing signs or changing navamshas or changing nakshatras or changing houses from the different ascendants. You'll see that some number here, which will be either a little bit less than 1 or a little bit more than 59, because each thing is divided into 60. So it comes up a different color. See the color? So what this means is that Rahu is changing house with respect to the Hora Lagna, equal house system. Prashna teaches that. So that could mean that if Rahu is important in the chart, and we see it is relatively important, then really if somebody asks a question, well, it's the Hora Lagna, which means money, then there's definitely some issue there. So probably from this thing, we can almost predict what the person is likely to be asking about. And then up here, we've got a number of sputas. That means kind of mathematical points, degrees in the sky. And the one that's used most is the trisputa. So we see it's 15 degrees, 4 minutes Aries. Hopefully you can see that. Now, if you read the Prashna Marga, it's mostly doom and gloom about these sputas, but in reality, it also explains that the effect can be positive. So you see the C and S and Ds and things. C is for creative energy, S is for sustaining energy, and D is for destroying energy. So this Trisputa isn't doing anything negative. See that? This is the Rashi effect, and this is the Navamsha effect. So that's all for the good. And then what we should do is we should look and see if this degree is conjoining anything in either of these charts. You know, you look in Aries, you see, okay, there's nothing here. It's fairly close to Jupiter in the natal chart. So that's a good thing, really, because the energy is good. And then Prashna Marga is the very famous textbook that's really at the basis of all the Prashna teachings. Prashna means answering questions. And it explains that you should calculate the Vimshoti Dasha from the Trisputa position for a year and use those times for making your interpretation. So I'm not trying to teach a whole workshop here, but you can look into this because it's a very quick and easy system actually to do something that's inherently quite complicated. So you can see if there's anything going on up here, and then you can see when it's going to show up. So I thought I'd show you that because it's quite nice. Now, you could also put the eclipses on this page. Something new in version 9 is the eclipse table. I don't know if you found it, but if you type eclipse, you see eclipses for the year table. This takes a few moments to calculate because it does a lot of calculations. So this would be the eclipses for the year, whatever year you're working with. And it'll tell you the type of the eclipse, lunar or solar, whether it's total or partial, annular, and also whether it's visible at the location that you're doing the prashna. Now, this is because one of the flaws is that you're asking, somebody asked a question near an eclipse. Near eclipse means within 3 days. So obviously, it's not a good time for asking auspicious questions. It might be good for some inauspicious questions, I don't know. But you can get the details from the table there. So those are some useful new things.
So, Andrew, question. Yeah. So for Prashna chart, the second native should be at the moment that the person would be asking the question, let's say now, right?
Yeah, let's say we're going to take the transit chart for now. And then for whatever location you set up. I mean, right now this is a sort of, I'm not living in Los Angeles, but it's showing for Los Angeles, right? So that's a particular time. You see, you have to decide what time you're going to answer the question, or it may be just this is the moment you've got to ask the question. And then you draw the chart for that. And then you do all the calculations based on that. Is that the answer?
Yep, got it.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, this is quite interesting. You see, if we take this time, of course the time zones and all, but there's just as a dummy time. But then you see far fewer flaws. Some of these flaws are very common, so it's very hard to get them down to 0. Rarely that will occur, but it's better. 4 is definitely better than 6. I thought we'd have a look at the Sarvatobhadra Chakra, because that's extremely cool. So now you may or may not want this table on the right. This table on the right has got a whole lot of things that are used traditionally with the Sarvatobhadra Chakra, but there's a lot of help on that page, I think. I'm going to focus on the chakra itself. So the idea of the Sarvatobhadra Chakra is basically it's a 9x9 matrix. And on each side you have 7 nakshatras. So if you want 27 nakshatra system, you have to use a circle. And I have a circle chart, and I'll show you how you can use that with the nakshatras. But this particular square diagram has to use 28 nakshatras because 27 is not divisible by 4. And there are these, so there's these two systems, the 27 system and the 28 system. And, you know, some people say the 28 system is more spiritual, which could be very well true, because what you've added is Abhijit, which is the highly auspicious nakshatra, very spiritual nakshatra. But for this system with this chart works for a lot of very practical things. You can predict elections, you can use it for the stock market, you can do all kinds of things with this. But it's a very much a Vimshotri related nakshatra system. So I just want to show you the basics of using it. All right, so this is the basic chart, and what you've got is the nakshatras around the outside, and then the rest of the chart is filled with the letters of the alphabet. See, this is one of the places where the first letter of the name becomes important. And then in the central square, you have the tithis and the days of the week, and then round that you've got the signs of the zodiac. So a few vowels in here. So this is the natal chart. You've got a little switch here. You see the 1. If you click on the 1, it now turns into a bi-wheel. So you've got the natal chart on the inside, and you've got the transit chart on the outside. And of course, you can run the transit backwards and forwards and use the various tools that we've shown for changing the outside. And so what I do is I start with the natal chart because it's a little easier to see before the detail of the second chart comes in, and I get a clear idea of what's going on with the natal chart. Now, for example, you see the moon is in Shatabhishaj. It's very easy in this chart to see the nakshatras. You know, if you use only the Rashi charts all the time, you have to look in the tables and do things like that. I mean, in my software, you can label the planets with their nakshatra. You can do things like that. But there's a bit of a tendency for the nakshatras to be hidden. You can't really see everything. And particularly, you can't see the aspects, the nakshatra-based aspects, which are called Vedas. So if you click on, say you click on the moon here, you see rather clearly, I hope, that there are aspects or Vedas coming from the moon to certain places. And if you click on the sun, you see the Vedas. Now, these are two-way things. So if you believe in Pluto, then there's a Veda between Pluto and sun. So it just happens Pluto is sitting there, so I'm using it. But you've got things that you wouldn't normally see. You won't notice them in the Rashi chart, these Vedas, but they're actually quite potent. So, I mean, I've given a whole series of different lectures on these things, and it's very interesting. And the Veda is not only running across to another nakshatra like this, but it's also touching on certain letters, signs, and maybe tithis also. See, this Venus here is not touching the weekdays and the tithis, but it's affecting certain signs and certain letters. So if you're interested in something, it's another person or some commodity, some object, something, some business, then you have to see what is this thing called and what is its first letter and where does that first letter show up on the chart. And then you can find out what Vedas are influencing it. See, this is the way the thing works. It's a complete system. And then if you throw in the transit charts, so we can see, let's see, in Saturn and Moon are together today, and here they are in Purvashada, and you see they are impacting the natal Mercury. See that? You won't see that in the Rashi chart. So these things actually work very well. It's a very useful system. Now up here, we have a sort of Sanskrit versus English mode, and this is for the labeling. You see this, the ascendant of the natal, of the transit chart is in Bharani. So that word Janma means that it's the first, counted from the ascendant. So suppose you want it from the sun or the moon, then we'll find that here Janma is labeled with the moon. And the same thing for the internal chart. Yes, labeled Janma. Or if you want to, it's labeled birth. You see, if you switch the English mode. And then certain, these are called special nakshatras. So certain nakshatras are labeled with particular words. That's why we call them special. Like this one here is the 10th, and it's used for career, the karma nakshatra we call it. So they're labeled. And then there are other labelings. You see the numbers. Well, there isn't a special nakshatra labeling, there's numbers. So these numbers run from 1, being where the moon is, say, if you're working from the moon, it goes 1 up to 9, and then it starts at 1 again. So these are the cycles of 9, there's 3 of them. 3 times 9 is 27. This is a 27-based system, not 28. And these are what we call the Tara Bala, or the whole Tara thing. In my book, Yoga of the Planets, I go to a whole nother level on the understanding the Taras. So I do recommend that. It's the last chapter in the book. It's very powerful, but usually people just say, well, 3, 5, and 7 are bad, and that's it. I mean, it's pretty much far too simplistic. But the software does mark the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th with a little bit different color. You see the color coding. So, you know, I'm following what the books tend to say, but if you really look into it, you'll find that 3rd, 5th, and 7th are actually particularly interesting and important, and it's worth studying that. So up here, this switch here, say it says 27 north. So if it says north or south, that's because in the north of India or the south of India, there's some small differences in how they assign the special nakshatras. And there are also 27 nakshatra schemes and 28 nakshatra schemes. So if you click here, you'll see it goes through various choices. So really, I know there's a lot of choices, but you might like to stick to 27 north, or if you have some particular reason for using one of the others, go for it, really. They're not the differences are not big, they're small, but some things shift. Then there are some other choices here. These are the upagrahas of the sun. So if you're into some of these advanced things, you know, so you might be with some teacher who starts to teach these things. So these Surya upagrahas, and this is a whole nother system. They are, you know, there's a lot of such schemes. Like the Surya upagrahas, there's Trishula, which is one particular scheme. Then these other things like Vidyunmukha is another scheme. Actually, I've put 2 schemes together here because they're both Surya upagrahas. So it's there are methods. If you're studying those particular books that teach these things, then that's useful. And this is the Kalana chakra for the moon. This is to do with things like, is this a good day to go traveling? So if the transit is showing something positive, then that's good. You see, this is positive. I mean, this is negative as far as the moon is concerned, but as far as the natal person is concerned, it's positive. So that's good. That's how that works. And you can do the same thing from the sun. And this is just the Tarabala. So this is the sort of first, actually, in the sequence, the one that comes up first. And it labels each one of the Tarabala with some keyword. So, you know, birth, and then the second is to do with wealth. Abhijit comes out the second, the same. Then Shravana, problems. the third one, the fourth one, prosperity, fifth one, obstacles. These are the sort of very simple first view of these Tarabalas. And if you read my book or study, you'll find there's more to it. But this gives a basic idea. Good. I don't know if there's any questions on that. It's its own system, but it's worth, if you get interested in this, it's worth listening to some of the lectures that I've given. I'll try and get those posted, because you'll see that it's very powerful. Like, this is how I knew, unfortunately, we were going to, I shouldn't say that. I take that back. But how I knew it was going to win the last election, because it was a clear-cut shot in this chart. There was a very obvious favorable yoga for one of the candidates. And you could see it clearly in this. So, Hand of Destiny and all that. Okay, so let's have a look at another cool thing. There are, at the top of the special menu, there's 2 yoga dialogues. So we'll look at the classical yogas and time search first. So this I wrote a long time ago, but if you haven't discovered it, it's quite fun. You can drag and drop planets into signs. Now this will never happen because it's got to be near the sun, right? So basically what you put some signs, planets in signs, and then you can search through time for that particular combination. And you can actually modify it so that you're just looking for certain longitudes. So you see, you click on longitudes and you select the sun, and you say you want it at a particular degree, and you can set up an orb. So then it won't just be looking for the sun in Aries, say it looks for the sun at 10 degrees Aries, say. So we can say this, we want 10 degrees here. That's fully exalted, and we give it a 1 degree orb. And then we say done. So now, if we click search time, it has to find a particular moment when the sun was at that degree and the moon was in Cancer and Mercury was in Taurus, and it's having some trouble finding it. It does a perfect job. You see, you have to go back to 1904 for that particular groupings. So it'll search through thousands of years very quickly, and you can use this to find charts. If somebody comes with a chart, but there's no date on it, but you have the planetary positions, you can find out in a moment or a few moments what the date and time was for that chart. So it's very optimized. It works nicely. And then if you click on the chart or the time, it'll show you the planetary positions, and you can import it straight into the software like that. Okay, you can go forward or backward in time. Now there's a classical yoga mode. This was the first thing I did for yogas. And you can see if you select a particular yoga, like Hamsamar Purusha Yoga, it gives a description of the yoga and a result. And then you can search your database for people with that particular yoga. So here's Paul Newman, and he's got Jupiter at 16 degrees Sagittarius in the ascendant. And then you can import that into your chart. Or you can make a B group. You remember making B groups? And if you make a B group, so we've done that, we click OK. Then we can go to the edit menu, and we can say select from native list. And here's the B group of people we found in our database. And then we can just click on one, see? Benjamin Britten. Ah, no, it's being put as the, you want it as the primary, okay. So there's Benjamin Britten. This is Dustin Hoffman, Jesse Ventura, George VI. You see, it's just so fast. You find something with some particular. So if you're trying to study something, so you say, I'm very interested in understanding what happens when, say, Jupiter's at 5 degrees Cancer. So you find all the charts with Jupiter at 5 degrees Cancer, create a B group. This all takes a few moments, really. And then you can go to whatever page in the software that you have your charts and tables you want to study. And then you just click, click, click through them, and you can see what each chart is showing. I know some teachers find this phenomenally useful. So I think for anyone, students as well, because then you can get a feeling for what is really, in common with these charts. Then we have the other custom yoga screen. Now this has got vastly more power in terms of designing yogas. You can design extremely complex yogas because you can say, okay, this is the Lord of the Ninth is debilitated and its Lord of the Ninth is conjunct Saturn. I was trying to think for a class I was giving how you could really, what happens if the Ninth Lord is in really bad shape? So I thought, what's the worst case scenario? Well, let's just say it's debilitated to conjunct Saturn. So then you click on search database and you find a whole lot of, well, you may find, if you don't find any, it'll tell you that there's none. So this particular database, which has only 86 charts, doesn't have any of this. But if you have a larger database, you'll find a few. And then when you study the charts, you'll find it's not necessarily a total disaster. It all depends on, their relationship with the, what's going on, where is the Lord of the Ninth, which house is it falling in, and things like that. It's aspected by Jupiter and so forth. So you can do some very interesting research with things like this. And so if you wanted to create this, basically, see, Lord of Ninth, you click here and you select the Lord of the Ninth. And then this is now what I call item A. See the A? So item A. And then we want to say, is it debilitated? So we say that's a sign state. So we go down to here and we click debilitated. Or we could click exalted, or we could click in a movable sign, whatever we want to say. That's the sign states. We could go with these other states. These are things like associated with one or more malefics, benefics, sambandhas, that means special associations, Papa Kartari, Papa Shubhakartari, combust, and so forth. So you can build up your combinations like this. You just click on something. Let's say this is not good enough. Let's go for we want it to combust as well. So now we've got these three things, and you can move, drag and drop, and you can delete things. You say delete the line. You can say I want either combust or conjunct Saturn. So you click or. So now you have both. There's bound to be somebody. Yeah, there's a few of those. Charlie Chaplin. So it's very, very flexible. And you can even have groups of choices. So we could say, okay, let's say the Lord of the Ninth is Vargotama, and then we'll start a group. We want this one in there. Put the or here. All right, no, it's there. Yeah. And then at the bottom here, we want to start a group, end the group. So what we've got here is that the Lord of the Ninth has to be Vargotama, and, because we haven't got an or, so and, it's either combust or it's conjunct Saturn. See that you can really get creative with these things. Then there's lots more things in here, lots more. This would take a whole hour and a half in its own, but you can do things like so many planets. You say, I want at least 3 planets which are in Aries or in the 3rd house or in the 7th house, or 3 planets are exalted, or things like that, or most planets. And then there's other things to do with the Panchanga, different days of the week and so forth. So you can make up very interesting rules. and then you just search the database and you get it. And you can build up files of yogas, you see. So you have a bunch of yogas with different names, and then you can actually create a custom report. You can have a report where it'll, not in this thing, you created your report in here, and you can even customize it with an author, a title, an introduction, a postscript, and a copyright notice. And then you go back to the reports menu, and you go custom reports, and you can select your report for a particular chart and the things you want to see in it, and you click here and it'll generate you a beautiful report with a cover page and everything based on the yogas you created. So I was always hoping that people would actually, you know, make things like this, and I've got somebody who's done a pretty nice job, so hopefully soon we'll be able to release that. But you can make a lot out of this if you get interested. So we've got a few minutes left. Let's see what we've got. Anything on the chat? Okay, so if you're studying with Sanjay Rath, let's just show you something. If you go to the File menu and you go to the Preferences, see Preferences? Now this is the screen that you see the first time you start the program, but you can get back to here anytime. And then at the top it says Settings by Teacher. So if you happen to be studying with either Sanjay Rath or Heart students, or the KP system or the systems approach system, then select it here, and it will adjust all of the different options in the software that are clearly related to that particular teacher. I hope that answers Holiday's question. There are a lot of things in the software I did create for Sanjay and for other teachers. Many things, but that's how you set up the options. Yeah, Marianne, I've just been using kind of some random, you know, we've not been trying to do this seriously, so we've not been using necessarily today's date, because I had a Titi Pravesh thing and that was some other date. So if you want to do now, you just click the OK plus transit button and you'll have the transit up here. Okay, so Nimit is asking about watching the transits. Let's just show me. You see, you can see everything moving around in the Sarvatobhadra chart. Let's say it would take 7 days, and then we'll just watch it happening. See the transits going on. And then you can do the same thing in other ways. Now there's a circle chart. Okay, so we don't want a horror chart. Options. This circle chart has a lot of power. Some people use it and they get completely fixed on it, and other people just ignore it. So it's really up to the user. But you can have two different charts, and you can see the houses, you can see the signs, and you can see the nakshatras. But let's just set this for, we'll take out the, yeah, we'll go for outside only see. Okay, so this is set up for one chart. Otherwise, you could have the other charts, planets on the inside, which is fantastic for compatibility. So this, and transits as well. So this is just a natal chart. And let me show you a few things about this, and then we'll add the transits in. So this is Pope John Paul II. You can see Mars right at the end of Virgo. It's very clear, you know, the relationship about the planets is extremely clear. Now you see up here it says Rashi, so we'll switch that. So this is, let's go the other way. Okay, these are the nakshatras. So you can see here's Chitra, Swati, Vishaka. They're labeled because there's no data on the inside, so there's room for labeling them. And they're color-coded. The color coding is there. So if you have some reasonable idea of where the nakshatras are, from the color coding and the little lines, you can tell where the planets are, even if you have another chart on the inside. And then there are various other options. This is labeled by the lord of the nakshatra. See Mars, Rahu, Jupiter. And this is the Tarabala scheme. So that's also very important. From the moon or from the ascendant. These are special nakshatras from the moon. So here it's just doing the Sanskrit version. So we have, for example, this is Dasha, that means the location, place. And then we've got special ascendant, special nakshatras from the ascendant. And these are the special nakshatras from the sun called the Shunya nakshatras. That's another subject. And then these are the Trishula nakshatras I mentioned before from the sun. So that's that. Let's just put the nakshatras in, and then we'll put a transit chart. So we go to the chart options, and we say in-out choices. We want the in and out chart. And then we're going to have the let's say you can have the transit chart on the inside or the outside. You know, Western astrologers tend to put it on the outside. That's me in the little, surrounded by the vast universe. Or the Vedic astrologers tend to put it on the inside. It's like everything is within me. I mean, you could argue like that. Anyway, let's put it on the inside. So let's just take, we'll take this as our current transit chart. So you see, this is the transits positions. You see Saturn and Ketu. So this is in March next year. We zoomed forwards and we came to March next year. So you remember Camilla was talking about, at the recent conference, she gave a talk about this Saturn-Ketu conjunction. So if we run the chart, let's just sort of start moving around. You see that thing going on? You can go at any speed you like. And you can see Ketu's about to enter Sagittarius. There it's entering Sagittarius. See Saturn's approaching Ketu. They get almost conjunct and Saturn goes retrograde. See, Saturn just went retrograde. Of course, Pluto is hanging there. But this is Saturn and Ketu here, almost exactly. And they're right on the borderline of Purvashada also. You can have a table here with the actual positions, which is very convenient too. But the degrees, this is actually the padas are being mentioned here in the degree. So let us see. We'll keep going. You see the two together? You can't really see the difference between Saturn and Ketu until some time has passed. Look at them. Now they're separating because Saturn's gone direct. So this is how you can study these transits. Is that answering your question? It's very wonderful. And if you put two people's charts, sorry, I'll just finish this point and then I'll listen to you. If you put two people's charts, you can see just like that how the planets are interacting. Yes, you're going to say.
Oh, this is fantastic.
It really is. And of course, you can throw in some aspect lines if you like. I mean, this chart, you see what you've got in here, take the aspect lines out. See, these are the sign boundaries. This is Libra. These are the nakshatra boundaries. And these lines, which are basically the North Indian chart, show the houses. So the whole thing is adjusted to fit within these house boundaries. So it depends what house system you selected. I mean, you can select the house system by just clicking and typing something like this. And then this is the Shripati. You've got a choice of a few different things. You can see everything, houses, nakshatras, rashis, and 2 charts all at the same time. It's really quite amazing. If you don't like these North Indian lines, you can change that. You go to the options and then the house style. See house style? So you can either get rid of the houses or you can have spokes and numbers. See? So these are the boundaries. Here are the numbers. The first house between here and here. And this is the 12th house, 11th house, 10th house. You can switch this to tropical positions, and then it's doing a similar job to the Western charts. Only the very good thing about this chart is that the cardinal points are all in the cardinal positions, like at the top, the ascendant, or you can put the ascendant on the side if you're really into that. But if you put the ascendant on the side, the top will be the 10th house cusp. Now, I thought that was rational when I did it. Only later on I discovered the Western astrologers let the midheaven drift all around because they're keeping the houses, the signs of a fixed length visually. But in fact, the signs do not have a fixed length. If you look at it, see Cancer is bigger than Gemini. It's because that's the way it actually is. You know, looking from the Earth, the size of the signs there's kind of being stretched or contracted due to the angle of the ecliptic. I mean, it's a bit of astronomy, but this is actually how it is, you know. So I didn't, when I found out that the Western astrologers were doing something slightly different, I decided not to change because I think, you know, these cardinal points are the critical places, you know, 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. So, you know, why not put them in the proper places in the chart? So this is a very nice thing. I mean, a lot of people say, well, I just can't get my head around the circle, but it's actually very powerful when you start to use it. Very powerful, and you'll find good results with it.
Right. So quick question, Andrew. So the inner circle, which represent the transit, that will be the same regardless of the native as we go through time. But when we put the native on the outer circle, then we can see how the native would react or be influenced by these transit planetaries.
Exactly. So, for example, I mean, if we run this backwards and just watch Jupiter here, you'll see Jupiter go through these various nakshatras, and eventually it'll come to the Lagna after it's done a bit of retrograding and all that. See that? That was March when it got stuck right in the Gandanta point. So you can see when, you know, how the planet, see Venus here is crossing his ascendant and then didn't quite reach Mars. It's going all the way back almost to Rahu and coming back in. So there's a triple transit of Jupiter, of Venus over the ascendant. And you see Jupiter's doing the same thing over his natal Rahu. So all of these things are going on. They're rather visually obvious in this chart, and they're all going to impact the person. So it's a very, very, very powerful, this diagram. But you can tweak it in various ways. I mean, you can fix it on the inside or the outside. You can put the transits on the outside, all that sort of thing. But you can do even more than what I've shown you. Let's just stop this for a moment. Now, you don't have to use just the Rashi chart. You can use any Varga you like. So let's put the Navamsha chart on the inside, and we'll put the Pope on the inside as well. See, outside and inside, and Rashi and Navamsha. I did quite a bit of lecturing on this also because it's amazingly powerful. See, normally we look at the Rashi chart and we look at the Navamsha chart separately, and we cannot see the conjunctions. Look at this. Venus and Ketu in tight conjunction, very close to his natal Rahu, Rashi Rahu, you see, Varga, Rashi. It really works. These conjunctions really work. See that down here with Rahu and Venus? If there was a much bigger gap here, then you would not get the same kind of effect. You'll find that these very tight conjunctions are the ones that really have an impact on the person. He's got quite a few. And you can do this between two people. You'll see couples. If you put Navamsha one and the Rashi of the other, then it often has a very powerful effect. And I even have because that's such a useful method, I have a layout example for it. See? Compatibility, circles, and graphs. Oh no, it's not this one, it's the other one. Here you go, with the Bhrigu Bindus. This is even more powerful, see? So I put the Rashi versus the Navamsha in both directions. So this has got a transit chart, but normally you'd be using this for two people who you have to do a compatibility for. And then you see things like, look at this Saturn-Sun thing. There's something going on, and it becomes visually obvious. And then down here is this thing called Bhrigu Bindus. So the Bindus are the midpoints between planets. So particularly the famous one is between the Moon and Rahu. And we're running out of time. But just to give you the basic idea, if there is a kind of a connection, it'll show up here. See, this is Mercury is in the midpoint between Rahu and Mars. So these things create connections between people. And if you get a particularly strong one that involves the moon or the sun, then the effect is much greater. So this is another thing you can research.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There's a lot of powerful things for compatibility, but this is one of the most powerful. Okay, let me just run through these questions before we finish. And when we finish, I'll edit up these recordings and make them available to you. Sarvatobhadra Chakra, there are one or two books. If you search on it, you'll find that it's a bit limited. But in Sanjay Rath's book, it's probably got the best collected papers in Vedic astrology. This has a very excellent chapter on the Sarvatobhadra Chakra, apart from many other good articles. So I recommend that. Yeah. So what we didn't go into was that when you've got a chart, you can label the planets with different things. So in the circle chart, the options are a little bit more limited. See, it says degrees, etc. So you've got a choice between showing degrees and not showing degrees, basically. If you put this, see here. So this is 22 degrees and 39 minutes. I know we had something slightly different before because you can, in fact, get it to do other things, but they don't work so well, so that's why it's kind of limited. But in the Sarvatobhadra Chakra, what I had was, you see, this is the number of the nakshatra, and this is the pada in the nakshatra, because that's what you normally need to know in the Sarvatobhadra Chakra. If you then put another chart on top of this, you'll probably find that the same scheme shows up, which you can then modify. There are lots of choices for regular charts of what you have numbered here. You just click on the thing and you go to chart options and degrees, and you'll see all these different options, including mantra numbers and charakarakas and all this sort of stuff. Okay, Sanjay Rath's book is the Collected Papers in Vedic Astrology. collected papers in Vedic astrology.
All right, thank you. I was away. Thank you so much.
From Sagittarius Publications. Great. Okay, well, we haven't covered everything. That's a big task, but we've done a lot of interesting things, and I hope it's helped you out. And maybe we'll have some more sessions. So I thank you all very much for attending, and have a lovely day.
It's truly wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. It was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Oh,
I've
good.
learned so much.
Great. Great. Namaste.